In the year 228, during China's Three Kingdoms period, a military strategist named Zhuge Liang found himself in an impossible situation. He was stationed in a small city called Xicheng. His army had just been divided, most of his forces sent elsewhere. He had perhaps a few thousand soldiers left, mostly administrative staff, not combat troops. Approaching him was an army of 150,000 men, led by one of the most capable generals in China, a man named Sima Yi. There was no escape. There was no reinforcement coming. There was only Xicheng and the approaching dust cloud of an enemy that outnumbered him 30-1. Zhuge Liang's response was not to flee, not to fight, and not to surrender. He ordered all the city gates thrown open. He had the streets swept. He had a handful of civilians go about their normal business near the gates, as if nothing unusual were happening. Then he went up to the city wall himself, sat down in a pavilion above the main gate, and began to play the guqin, a traditional stringed instrument, calmly and slowly, in full view of the approaching army. Sima Yi's forces halted at the city walls. Sima Yi looked at the open gates, at the calm civilians, at the man playing music on the wall, and then he did something nobody expected. He ordered his army to retreat. He told his officers, "Zhuge Liang never takes unnecessary risks. If those gates are open, it is a trap. We do not know what is inside, but there must be something." There was nothing inside, just a man who understood that an enemy who feared him would do more damage to itself than any weapon he possessed. That story, the empty city stratagem, may be the most famous thing Zhuge Liang supposedly did, and it may never have happened at all. Zhuge Liang was born in 181 CE in what is now Shandong province. His father died when he was young. An uncle raised him, and when that uncle also died, Zhuge Liang was left on his own at around age 15. He retreated to a farm in the hills near what is now the city of Wuhan. He studied. He read histories, strategy manuals, philosophy, and agricultural texts. He cultivated connections with other scholars. He built a reputation, quietly, as one of the most intelligent men in the region. He was also, by all accounts, quite deliberate about his reputation. He compared himself to two of history's greatest statesmen. His friends thought this was arrogant. Some of them believed him. In 207 CE, a warlord named Liu Bei came to visit Zhuge Liang's farm. Liu Bei was descended from the Han imperial family, but the Han dynasty had collapsed into civil war. He had been fighting for years with limited success, losing more than he won, moving from patron to patron. He was in his mid-40s, running out of time, and looking for something he had not found. A strategist who could actually win. He visited Zhuge Liang's farm 3 times before Zhuge Liang agreed to speak with him. Zhuge Liang was 26 years old. The first meeting lasted all day. What Zhuge Liang presented to Liu Bei that day was one of the most accurate geopolitical analyses in Chinese history. He laid out the situation precisely. The north was controlled by Cao Cao, who was too powerful to challenge directly. The southeast was controlled by Sun Quan, who could be allied with but not displaced. The southwest, the Sichuan basin, rich and protected by mountains, was held by a weak ruler and was available. He told Liu Bei, "Take the southwest. Ally with Sun Quan. Wait for Cao Cao to overextend. Then move." Liu Bei listened, and then asked Zhuge Liang to come with him. Zhuge Liang left his farm and never went back. The following year, The plan's first major test came at the Battle of Red Cliffs. Cao Cao had moved south with 200,000 soldiers, possibly more, intent on conquering the remaining independent territories in one campaign. Zhuge Liang traveled to Sun Quan's court and negotiated an alliance. He argued, persuaded, and debated Sun Quan's skeptical advisors for days. The combined Liu Bei and Sun Quan forces, vastly outnumbered, used fire ships against Cao Cao's fleet on the Yangtze River. Cao Cao's forces were routed. His invasion failed. Zhuge Liang did not command the fire ships. That distinction belongs to Sun Quan's general, Zhou Yu. But the alliance existed because of the diplomacy Zhuge Liang had conducted. The legend gave him more credit than he deserved. The reality was impressive enough. Over the following 15 years, Zhuge Liang served Liu Bei as his most trusted advisor and administrator. When Liu Bei finally captured the Sichuan Basin and declared himself King of Han, Zhuge Liang was the man who ran the administration. Liu Bei trusted him completely. Too completely, some historians argue. He relied on Zhuge Liang to the point where he sometimes stopped making decisions himself. In 219 CE, Liu Bei's general Guan Yu was killed, and Liu Bei's response was to launch a massive invasion of the eastern ally, Sun Quan, against Zhuge Liang's advice. The invasion was a disaster. Liu Bei's forces were destroyed at the Battle of Yiling in 222. Liu Bei never recovered from it. He died in 223, leaving behind his son Liu Shan, who was intelligent enough to recognize that he was not his father, and not Zhuge Liang. In his final instructions, Liu Bei told Zhuge Liang directly, "If my son proves incapable, take the throne yourself." Zhuge Liang refused. He served Liu Shan as regent, held the kingdom together, and began preparing the one thing he believed might still save the Shu Han state. Between 228 and 234 CE, Zhuge Liang launched 5 military campaigns northward against Cao Wei. He was trying to reconquer the central plains of China, to restore the Han dynasty, to achieve what Liu Bei had spent his life chasing. The campaigns were remarkable for their discipline, their logistics, and their failure to achieve the decisive victory that would have changed everything. Each time, Zhuge Liang advanced. Each time, supply lines ran short, or a key moment was missed, or the Wei forces under Sima Yi refused to come out and fight. Preferring to let the mountains and distances exhaust the Shu army. The first campaign came close. Zhuge Liang nearly broke through before a subordinate's mistake cost him the position he needed. He retreated, executed the subordinate, a man named Ma Su, who had been a personal favorite, and prepared the next campaign. The campaigns continued year after year. Zhuge Liang reorganized the army constantly, developed new logistics methods, and introduced a transport device called the wooden ox, a primitive wheeled cart, to move supplies through mountain terrain. He wrote, he administered, he worked. People who saw him during these campaigns noted that he was doing the work of 10 men. He checked every document personally. He reviewed every supply report. He could not delegate the critical tasks because he did not fully trust anyone else to do them correctly. In 234 CE, during the 5th Northern Expedition, Sima Yi learned something that changed the campaign. A messenger arrived from the Shu camp with a gift. It was a set of women's clothing. Zhuge Liang had sent it as an insult, an accusation of cowardice. He was demanding that Sima Yi come out and fight instead of sitting behind his fortifications. Sima Yi accepted the gift calmly. He put on the clothes, let his officers see him, laughed, and did not move his army. One of his own officers, furious at the insult, demanded permission to fight. Sima Yi submitted a formal request to the Wei emperor, a request he knew would be denied, to attack. The emperor denied it. Sima Yi showed his men the response and continued waiting. He had learned something from that messenger. Zhuge Liang's appetite was poor. He was eating little and working too much. The man was ill. A few weeks later, in autumn 234, Zhuge Liang died in his field headquarters. He was 53 years old. His last act was to arrange for the army to retreat in good order, with his death kept secret long enough to prevent a rout. The Shu army retreated. The northern expeditions were over. Zhuge Liang failed to reunify China. The Shu Han kingdom he had spent his life defending was conquered by Wei in 263, fewer than 30 years after his death. So was he a genius, or a man who stayed loyal to a cause that was already lost, expending extraordinary talent on campaigns that could never succeed? The historical consensus is complicated. He was a remarkable administrator. The Shu Han state survived and remained stable, largely because of his management. His military innovations were genuine. His loyalty was, by any standard, total and genuine. But some historians argue that the northern expeditions were strategic mistakes, that the mountains and distances between Shu and Wei made reconquest fundamentally impossible, and that the campaigns drained resources Shu needed for survival, that a less loyal, more pragmatic Zhuge Liang might have built a stable, independent Shu Han that could survive much longer. Others argue he had no choice, that once he had promised Liu Bei to restore the Han, stopping would have been a betrayal of everything his life stood for. The Romance of Three Kingdoms, written over 1,000 years after his death, turned him into a supernatural figure, a man who could predict the weather, summon the wind, and see 10 moves ahead in every situation. Most of the famous stories, including the empty city stratagem, are fiction or heavily embellished. The real Zhuge Liang was something more impressive and more human. A man of genuine, exceptional ability who bound himself to an impossible promise and then kept it, campaign after campaign, until his body gave out. This is The Dragon Throne. We cover the figures of Asian history who were too complicated for simple conclusions. Subscribe if you want more. New episodes every week.